thank you for joining me on Alyssa Jean's Star Trek Reviews. My name is Alyssa, and this is my 10 least favorite episodes of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. So, when talking about the episodes of Deep Space Nine I don't like, you'll find that I end up talking about a lot of comedy episodes that were, for the full 48-minute runtime, were dedicated toward being funny. And while I don't think every comedy episodes in Deep Space Nine is a failure, I do think the vast majority of them are. I just don't think Deep Space Nine does it very well. It just ends up coming across like a really bad 1990s sitcom ripoff, and it ends up being neither as good as regular Deep Space Nine episodes, nor, quite frankly, as good as a 1990s sitcom. They just don't do it well. It's just cheesy, hokey, and terrible, and in some cases quite offensive, and I will talk about a couple of those as well, and in all cases very, very dated if you're trying to watch it now. Like, I don't think they were good to begin with, but watching them now, it's just, wow, this is so 1990s. And a lot of these episodes I'm going to talk about, other people might term as fun. In fact, I have heard some of these episodes in particular be described as fun. And you know what? If you're one of those people, please, I'm not trying to stop you from having your fun. If those are fun for you, great, good for you. I'm happy for you. For me, they're not fun so much as crappy. Whenever I hear anyone use the term fun for Deep Space Nine episodes, usually means it's a crappy episode. I just don't think they're very fun. Now, I'm not some kind of old curmudgeon who doesn't like fun in her Deep Space Nine, because I do like fun when it is done well, when humor is injected into otherwise serious episodes to create moments of levity. I think that's when Deep Space Nine does fun and humor the best. And there's one particular episode on my other video, my 20 favorite Deep Space Nine episodes video, where I think that episode really exemplifies that, where it's an otherwise pretty serious episode, but they're really good at injecting humor into it. However, when Deep Space Nine tries to do an entire episode dedicated to humor, they just suck at it, and oftentimes it ends up being offensive as well as bad. So that's the majority of episodes on my list. Maybe not every single one falls into that category, but that's generally the episodes that I don't like in Deep Space Nine. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started into my least favorite episode list, starting with number 10. Number 10! At number 10, take me out to the holosuite from Season 7. So this is a prime example of the type of episode I was just talking about in the introduction, as there might be others who may think of this as a fun episode, whereas I personally think of it as idiotic. Seriously, I feel like I lose a couple points off of my IQ score just for having to sit through it. This is so dumb. So this is rehashing an old sitcom trope, specifically the rivalry trope, which is something that comes up again in another episode, which I will talk about later on in this video. But in this case, it's playing off the trope where in sitcoms, usually it's a middle-aged man, usually the dad of a family, if it's a family sitcom, who engages in a petty rivalry with somebody he went to high school with 20 years ago, or something like that, and they're always trying to re-up each other. Here it's Cisco and an old rival from Starfleet Academy, which is a Vulcan captain. And this Vulcan captain is not in the least bit logical and is filled with emotion. I mean, how logical is it to engage in a petty rivalry with somebody you went to Starfleet Academy with 20 years earlier? There's no logic in that at all. Also, he is the captain of an all-Vulcan crew, which is one of the dumbest things I've ever seen in Star Trek, as there is no such thing as an all-Vulcan crew or an all-human crew. That's segregation. Starfleet doesn't believe in segregation. They like to integrate all the different species together. And the dumbest thing about this episode is the fact that nobody goes up to Cisco. After he says, we gotta spend 2 weeks to prepare for this baseball game, no one goes up to him and say, hey, excuse me, sir, isn't there a freaking war going on right now? I mean, they're in the middle of the Dominion War. How do they have 2 weeks time to take off from a war to prepare for a dumb-ass baseball game? I did a discussion with my brother on Deep Space Nine about a year ago or so, my brother Mark from Enchantment of Eternity, and we were joking that this would have been the ideal opportunity for the Dominion to attack the station, take over the station again, this time permanently, and they can kill off all of Cisco's crew because they're wasting time on this dumb-ass baseball game. This episode makes no sense, and I don't find it to be very fun. I actually find it to be very dumb, and that is why it is number 10 on my list.
Number 9, number 9, number 9.
Number 9, Move Along Home from Season 1. Now, to be fair, I don't think this is one that a lot of people are depicting as fun. Well, except maybe my brother, who I think likes this episode better than most people do. But I do feel like the majority of the fandom don't think of this as a very good episode. In fact, many of you may think that I have this ranked too low on my list, all the way down at number 9. But I just feel like that there are other episodes that I like even less than this one. But this one is just silly gone wrong. This is early on in Season 1, so Deep Space Nine is very much still trying to find its legs, and they try to do this comedy episode that just really doesn't work. And I actually really hate the scene where Cisco does the Calamarain, beep, 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 Calamarain, because there was no rule saying that he had to use a silly high-pitched voice. He could have just said Calamarain, Calamarain in his normal voice, but he used a silly high-pitched voice for laughs. Well, Cisco is not initiating it. It's coming from the writers, the creators, or director possibly, telling him to use a silly voice for laughs. And it's so dumb. It's so dumb. And what really anchors me about this episode is that there are no stakes. Our heroes are never actually in danger at all. So in the end, when that alien dude goes, oh, it's only a game, I just want to go, well, fuck you. You just made me waste an hour of my life watching an episode that has no stakes. Why? So that is why this episode is number 9 on my least favorite episode list.
Number 8 is pretty great. Oh wait, this is the least favorite list. Number 8 is not so great, actually.
At number 8, Meridian from Season 3. So this episode represents the worst romance in Deep Space Nine, and I think among the worst single episode romances in all of Star Trek, which is saying a lot because there are a lot of bad ones, especially in the original series. But this one is terrible. This, of course, predates Worf joining the show. So Dax quote-unquote falls in love with this dude, who I will refer to as Goodwin because that's the name of the character that this actor would play in the show Lost. So Goodwin is a total creep, completely creeps on Dax. I mean, he just makes your skin crawl, just the way that he creeps on her in the beginning. But she's into it. You know what? That's fine. If that's what she's into, and the show wants to present this as a lustful relationship, like they just lust after each other and just want to have sex with each other all the time, I could buy that. That would be believable. But what the show wants us to believe is that somehow they have this really deep, profound love for each other, and it's very much a tell, not show scenario where I'm not seeing that at all. I don't know where that is supposed to be coming from. And their love is so deep and profound that Dax is willing to give up 60 years of her life, and she won't ever basically see any of her friends again, or if she does, they'll be very, very old, and she's willing to give it up just for this guy she just met like a couple days ago and really knows nothing about. They don't know each other at all. Also, there is no on-screen chemistry between these two characters or these two actors. It is just bloody awful. It is one of the worst romances in all of Star Trek, and easily the worst in Deep Space Nine. Now that is the A plot, and the B plot is also worth talking about because this is one of the rare episodes where both the A plot and the B plot are absolutely terrible, and I would almost say that the B plot is even worse than the A plot. So this plot is trying to play for laughs, as what I talked about in the intro, and what they're trying to get laughs out of is the fact that Quark is trying to sell Kira's image to this really creepy alien dude played by Jeffrey Combs in order so that Jeffrey Combs can create a realistic hollow version of Kira and have sex with her. So Quark is trying to steal Kira's image without her permission so that a creepy guy can have sex with it. Hardy har freaking har. Like, that is basically a violation of Kira, at least, if not arguably a form of sexual assault. And I don't find it funny. I also found the scene at the end with Quark on Kira's body to be more creepy than funny. So this makes this episode even worse than it already was with just the A plot. Number 7, staying with Season 3 for a moment, Fascination. So, when I did my Next Generation least favorite list, I had one Loxana Troy episode in it, and I had mentioned that I generally think that she's actually a lot worse in Deep Space Nine than she was in The Next Generation, and that's true, because 2 out of her 3 Deep Space Nine appearances do appear on this list, and the third one didn't quite make the cut, but I don't love that one either. I really don't like this whole thing with her obsessing over Odo, and it's supposed to be funny, I guess, that she makes Odo uncomfortable. Frankly, it makes me uncomfortable too. I feel bad for the poor guy that this crazy lady is obsessing over him for no reason. It's just not funny. And why is she here? Council Troy isn't on Deep Space Nine. Why do we need to see her? It's because Majel Barrett is the widow of Gene Roddenberry. That's why. Can't she just be happy with being the computer voice? God. And this episode in particular actually reminds me of that Next Generation episode, Manhunt. As in that episode, Loxana is going through some form of Poonfar, where she goes Pepe Le Pewing around the Enterprise, whereas here she's actually projecting this energy that makes other characters act like Pepe Le Pew to each other, and it's played for laughs. Hardy har har, trying to force people to have sex with you. That's hilarious. And it's no two characters. It's never consensual. Like, no two characters are attracted to each other. It's one to another, to another, to another, and it's just really dumb. It's really bad. And the way that they try to kiss each other, it looks like it was. This was come up with by someone who doesn't know what kissing actually looks like. I mean, maybe this was supposed to be played for laughs, but it's just awful. It is so awful, everything about this episode, and that's why it comes in at number 7 on my least favorite episode list. Number 6. Number 6, If Wishes Were Horses, from Season 1. This episode has Rumpelstiltskin in it. Enough said. Moving on now to number 5. That should be all it takes to just say how bad this episode actually is. But there's more. This episode, I think, is trying to do a version of the original series episode Shore Leave, wherein the characters' thoughts, or fantasies more so in this case, come to life, but except in this case they are actually actual alien beings who are there for some reason that's never explained, and they apparently all know each other. What is their purpose? Who are they? What is going on? It doesn't matter because it's a silly episode, so we're never going to explain anything. They also wanted to have an excuse to have a version of Dax that was really into Bashir, which was dumb. Also, I think really the whole episode probably started because they just wanted to have O'Brien, an Irish character played by an Irish actor, interact with a leprechaun. But thankfully, Colm Meaney put his foot down and refused to do that. He would have quit the show if they made him interact with a leprechaun. So instead, they replaced it with Rumpelstiltskin. While not as offensive to Irish folk, still really, really stupid. And this entire episode is really, really stupid and makes absolutely no sense, and that is why it is number 6 on my list.
It's alive! Number 5!
Number 5 from season 5, Let He Who Is Without Sin. So Dax and Worf decided to go on a romantic getaway to Ryza, and Worf is a complete asshole to Dax the entire time just because she knows how to relax and have fun and he does not. And Worf even signs up with this ridiculous extremist fundamentalist dude who does not believe anyone is allowed to have fun when there is a looming threat of the Dominion hanging over their head. Now mind you, the war has not begun yet at this point. The Dominion just exists, so you're not allowed to have fun. And Worf is all for this, and yet a couple seasons later he's perfectly willing to play baseball during the actual war. What about that baseball game, Worf? What about it? Anyways, he's a complete dick to Dax, never apologizes, and instead his excuse is this laughable origin story wherein Worf played soccer as a little kid. Worf played soccer and he accidentally kills this kid during the soccer game. Now that was comedy. It wasn't intended to be comedy, but it is so ridiculous that it is funny. He never apologizes. Then they get along and everything's great, and this episode sucks, and that's why it's number 5 on my list.
Number 4. Woo!
Number 4, The Muse from season 4. And here's that other Loxana Troy episode I mentioned earlier. And as I said earlier, I hate the whole obsessing over Odo thing. So how do they respond to that hatred that I have? They throw in a ridiculous sitcom plot where, I mean, this is directly out of a bad sitcom where Loxana talks Odo into marrying her so that she can get out of this marriage from this overbearing asshole guy that I don't understand why she was ever with to begin with. And it has a cringe-worthy scene when they get married where Odo starts giving a little speech and stops. I actually skipped that scene, honestly, when I did my recent rewatch of Deep Space Nine. It was too difficult to sit through. I just couldn't take the torture, so I fast-forwarded through that scene. I don't know what actually happens. It's awful. And this is another episode like Meridian where both plots are terrible. The plot that actually gives this episode its title, The Muse, is another cringeworthy plot where this alien is stealing away Jake's creative energy in a very oddly rapey sort of way. It is very bizarre, and I don't really get what they were going for here, but it is just awful. Poor Cyril Lofton, the things that they made him do on this show. The Three Amigos, number 3. At number 3, Bada Bing, Bada Bang from season 7. So Vic Fontaine, if you're a Deep Space Nine fan, you either love him or you hate him, and I am very firmly in the hate him camp. So let me tell you about my feelings about Vegas lounge music. To me, it's soulless old white man music. It's the kind of music that I imagine people of color would make fun of white people for because it has absolutely no soul and it is very painful to listen to. So imagine my horror when one of my favorite sci-fi shows decides to take up 5 to 10 minutes of its airtime that is supposed to be devoted to quality sci-fi, wars against changeling species, and messages about the horrors of war, and all the amazing sci-fi things traveling in the parallel universes. They're taking up 5 to 10 minutes of that wonderful airtime for crappy lounge music. That is why I hate Vic Fontaine with an absolute passion. He is the second worst thing that the Star Trek franchise has ever done, with the number one worst thing being the theme song from Star Trek Enterprise. So this episode dedicates an entire hour to Vic Fontaine in a ridiculous story where the crew wants to participate in a stupid heist movie to help an imaginary person in an imaginary situation, while once again there's a freaking war going on. Now, I really can't stand Cisco in this episode. He really is a big sellout. He sells out on his values. Now, early in the episode, he makes a very strong point that he refuses to go to this Vegas 1950s simulation because his people, African Americans, were not allowed in those lounges unless they were low-wage workers. And that's about it. But he sells out, he goes in, and not only does he go in and participate, but he sings a horrible lounge song with Vic Fontaine. It is the most awful thing I've ever seen in my entire life. If not for the just atrocities of the number 2 and number 1 episodes on my list, this could very well be number 1, because this is a horrible, horrible episode. Just the two of us. Number two, just the two of us. Number 2. And number 2, Arrivals from Season 2. So this is the ultimate in bad sitcom episodes. And you know what part of my problem probably is that I watched an awful lot of bad 70s and 80s and 90s sitcoms when I was a kid. And some of it was generally really bad. So then when I see a Deep Space Nine episode, a show that I really admire and like, a sci-fi show trying to emulate what is already a bad sitcom trope and doing a poor job at it at that, it is very difficult to sit through. In fact, I've often said about this particular episode that if anyone ever wanted to get answers out of me, all you have to do is tie me down to a chair, prop open my eyes, and force me to watch this episode on repeated loop. Actually, it wouldn't have to be repeated loop. I wouldn't make it through the first time watching this episode before I would be begging for mercy. No, please make it stop. I'll tell you anything you need to know. Just make it stop. This episode is torture to me. So what it is, in case you don't remember, is this cheesy 1990s car salesman type dude from straight out of a 90s sitcom is plopped onto the promenade for this episode under the guise that he is of Guinan's race of listeners, and it really makes no sense, and he engages in this petty rivalry with Quark, thus the return of the rivalry trope to this list. And this one is even worse than Take Me Out to the Holosuite, as one of the characters is somebody we don't know and don't give a crap about, and I find to be extremely obnoxious. Like, this guy is very annoying, and he carries around this luck device that causes people to have good luck, but then sometimes it causes them to have bad luck, and then it doesn't make any sense, and then I have no idea what the hell is happening because the writers don't really care about trying to make it make any sense. They think they're just going to get laughs or something, which really pisses me off. So this whole episode really irritates me, as well as makes me suffer. And this episode also, of course, has the rivalry between O'Brien and Bashir, as they are playing racquetball with each other, and Bashir always wins, and O'Brien is getting, really upset by that, and he keeps wanting to beat Bashir, and that is another old trite sitcom trope. See, I've watched a lot of sitcoms, so that's probably my problem. But then they tie this into the other plot where Quark is making a big announcement about this big matchup of the century, Bashir versus O'Brien and racquetball, and he's trying to sell tickets and make people make bets on it, and he's trying to make money off of it. Who in the hell would care about two Starfleet officers playing racquetball? Nobody would care about that. This is so dumb. This whole episode is so dumb. And I know I use that word a lot on this video, but a lot of these episodes are just dumb. I don't know any other way to describe them. And this is one of the dumbest of them all. And it is number 2 on my least favorite list. And now, everyone, here's the moment you've all been waiting for. My number 1 least favorite Deep Space Nine episode. And my number 1 least favorite episode of Deep Space Nine is the unfortunate episode Profit and Lease from Season 6. When I think about it, I undersold it in the intro when I said some episodes are offensive. This is actually the most offensive episode in the entire Star Trek franchise, in my opinion, and should be pulled from all streaming services. And my brother recently did a countdown on his channel, Enchantment of Eternity, of the worst episodes in the Star Trek franchise, and this landed as his number 1, and I wholeheartedly agree that this is the worst and most offensive episode in the franchise. Now, I think that I should probably at some point do an entire video devoted to the problems of this episode, because it's hard to talk about it all in such a short period of time. But I'll do my best to sum it up. Obviously, this is not the most helpful episode for the trans community. In fact, it is very harmful. It plays into the whole Mrs. Doubtfire trope, wherein a person perceived as male is dressing up in clothing that is perceived as female, and ha ha ha, that's so silly and ridiculous, and it's really played for laughs. And if you think I'm, being a prude or just don't have a sense of humor or whatever, just think about how harmful that is if you are struggling with your trans identity and you're constantly barraged with shows and films that really mock who you are inside, who you know you are inside, and really make light of it. It sucks. It really does. And in examining this episode even deeper, Quark actually, for all intents and purposes, transitions. He doesn't just dress in quote-unquote female clothing, because he does get the surgery, because it's the 24th century and it's easily reversible by the end of the episode. And he actually goes on female hormones, which really minimizes the actual experience of transitioning and struggling with your trans identity and making the decision to be who you truly are. And Quark is not doing that, nor does he learn anything from his experience, as he is just as much of a sexist asshole at the end of the episode as he was in the beginning. So it is really, really hurtful. And I would also say this episode is harmful to women, cis and trans, as it really lays heavily into female stereotypes. And actually, they at one point mock Rom, because Rom knows a lot about stereotypical female behavior, and he is made to look like a fool. He's made to look like he's less than, because he's a male who knows about these quote-unquote female type behavior. So actually, in a way, this is harmful to men as well. This episode is just harmful to everybody. Also includes another one of those great Pepe Le Pew type scenes, as this Ferengi dude is essentially trying to rape Quark at a certain point, and it is played for laughs. Quark also engages in textbook sexual harassment with one of his Dabo girls, and the laugh that is played for at the end is that although Quark is detransitioned, he still has female hormones coursing through his body. So when he finds out that this Davo girl is into him, he can't take advantage of her because he still has female hormones and he hasn't learned a damn thing. This episode is so disgusting. As I said, I should probably do an entire video talking about how disgusting this episode is, because I could go on for a while about this episode. And it is, at the very least, my least favorite episode of Deep Space Nine, and probably my least favorite of the entire Star Trek franchise. Thank you so much for joining me for my 10 least favorite episodes of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. For a more positive video, please check out my 20 favorite episodes of Deep Space Nine. I have also done favorite and least favorite videos for Star Trek the original series and the Next Generation. I also do weekly reviews on Lower Decks, so please check out all of that. Like, subscribe, and I will see you soon. Goodbye.